Welcome to Chaos to Come. You have adopted and the honeymoon is over. We are your hosts, Jody Randolph
and Cindy Schulze,
offering practical advice and natural solutions to adoptive moms while maintaining your sanity. And we are in National Adoption Month, and we have decided to focus on the siblings of adoptive children. So Cindy has invited her son and daughter, Eric and Emily, to join us today.
Yep. Yes, I have. And they actually came and joined me and stuff. So they are part of the reason why I can remain sane at home is these two. They are a lot of my support. And I'm going to be all emotional during this because I'm really proud of them. But we adopted when you guys were
9?
I think I was 8, yeah.
8 and 9.
Got Angel and Allie.
8 and 9, and we started this whole process with it. First, Kevin and I started praying about it, and then we told Eric and Emily about the going into foster care and asked them to pray with us about it, and they did, and all of us just felt like that's what we were supposed to do and stuff. Just so that this interview isn't hours long. Fast forward a few years. We've got a few kiddos. They're not easy. You know, they have trauma. And you're not really totally prepared, even though if you go through the classes and they talk about worst case scenarios and stuff like that, it's not real until you live it. And until you live it day to day. And you start kind of thinking, not that you wish you hadn't done it, because it's the right thing. We always knew that this was the right thing for us to do. But then you kind of reminisce for the good old days. And as Eric and Emily's mom, I was kind of felt a little guilty for bringing the trauma into their lives. And so I've learned since then that guilt wasn't necessary, that God meant this for all of us, to grow us all.
Right, and when God asks you to do something, you obey.
You obey, you do it, and you know, and you trust.
Right.
You know, you trust that the outcome is not just for you, it's not just for those lives you're bringing into your house, but it's also for the lives that have been in your house.
What do you think the hardest thing for you growing up was?
I think the hardest thing, honestly, is dealing with your traumatized siblings. I mean, there was a period of time when Angel was melting down once a week, and by melting down I mean blowing up. And during those confrontations he would say things like he was gonna kill Dad and all that, and it was I usually took it on myself to get the smaller children, take care of the smaller kids during that. So I was a buffer for them during that, which meant that we have 2 with Down syndrome, so they're emotional sponges. So I'm trying to keep them calm and not add to the chaos that is happening with Angel, and at the same time dealing with my own feelings about the situation and being on edge. And I think that's probably was the hardest, is just dealing with that trauma. And then obviously I went from being the youngest of 2 to the second oldest of 6 in 2.5 years. So it was just always something changing and going on, and that was a lot. I remember I cried when my mom told me that she was pregnant with Jillian. Because I didn't want it. I was like, no more. So.
Yeah, and I think Emily's always been kind of like the mediator and the person who feels the weight of conflict, and probably felt the weight of adding another kid to the family more strongly, I think, than I did. I'm a bit more of a contrarian, and so I think the challenge for me was getting out of this space where I could just be the argumentative older brother and moving into a space of leadership and like looking after all these extra kids. That change was challenging, but I think in the long run it was good, because I look back at the kid that I was going into middle school, and it was
a
not
terrorist
great.
of itself.
It was not great, but it prepared me a lot for being an adult and for moving into that space. But yeah, I think like moving into that leadership role and then learning to care for and pay attention to the needs of everyone around me was a difficult adjustment when I was a kid.
So what was the most fun that you had from this whole experience?
I mean, you gain siblings, so you gain built-in friends when they're not being terrorists and threatening to kill your dad. And so, just those older sibling perks that you get to like annoy them. Like we once,
you get to make fun of them.
Yeah, we once convinced Allie that if she ate too many purple Fruit Loops, her nose was gonna turn purple. And then later after breakfast, something happened and she had a purple mark on her nose. And so we're like, Allie, you ate too many purple Fruit Loops, and she walked around with her hand on her nose for the rest of the day because she thought her nose was turning purple. That's always one that makes me laugh.
I think adding new personalities
Yeah.
to something and getting to learn a new person and all of the just change that comes with that it's a joyful thing. All in all. There's a lot of hard that comes with it, but on the good days, it brings diversity and so much extra love into the house. So.
Yeah.
So many blessings, probably.
Yeah, and I think like also getting to teach those kiddos that love is safe and family is safe is also pretty cool. Like Angel, I would just like cling on him. He's taller than me now, like by a good several inches at least, and I just like hang on him. And when we first got him, he didn't want that. He would like try to push me off, but I'd hang on him and I'd kiss his cheek, and I'm like, I just love you. And he's like, and now he'll just stand there and he accepts it, and because he knows that like this is just how big sister works.
What did you call that?
Oh, forced bonding. Yeah. I make people like me sometimes. Like,
especially when it's your siblings.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, you will like me. You will be my friend, and that you just don't get a choice in this matter.
I love that.
And the fun like sparkly porta pies.
Oh yes, we get lots of fun inside jokes and things that kids say that you're like, what, like. That brown thing in a tree, talking about a squirrel. That was Karsten. Allie once asked somebody to pass her that drinky thing, like that was a cup.
Yeah, everybody comes with their quirks, and you just don't get that level of diversity and difference in a biological family
when you're living in your
own
DNA.
Yeah,
It's
well, or in a small family, you don't get that level of quirkiness.
We have variety.
It's never a dull moment.
Variety.
Yeah, and it's not so much, being like, it's not so much from the past, but now looking at, family photos and just seeing just how diverse the experience and the genetics and everything that you want to look at is. It's cool, and just like that photo is a testimony in itself. I like to use it for shock and awe when I'm talking to people. Just be like, let me show you my family pictures, and they're like, family pictures, and I show them, and their eyes go the size of dinner plates, their jaws drop, and they're like, what?
Yeah, that's usually whenever I have to do that icebreaker, like share a fun fact about yourself. That's usually my go-to fun fact. Is I'm number 2 of 10, and everybody's like, and then
it's got to be followed up real quick with 7 of them were adopted.
Yeah,
because then everybody thinks that we're Mormon.
Yeah. Yeah, not a lot shocks us anymore because of the family that we have, and that's nice.
Yeah. Which is probably good as adults to be able to work in work environments and things to just roll with what happens and not be super stressed about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that all the time at work. we just opened a new facility that I'm a part of the beginning stages of opening it, and everyone around me is stressed and angry with each other because nothing works. And I just kind of sit back and I'm like, it'll work eventually. And why do I need to be stressed about it?
Right, exactly. That comes from your mom. She says that a lot. It's gonna work out.
It's just how our
That's 'cause
family
it always
has to be.
has.
Yeah, it's
Right.
And it
it's-
very rarely has anything to do with us.
yeah.
Right.
That's just how we've grown
Exactly.
up, and you know, that's like, I would feel the same way about it that Eric said. Like, that's just how our family is, and things go wrong all the time, and we're just like, hey, we strapped into the roller coaster, and we're going, and we can't get off. We can't change it, so might as well sit back and enjoy the ride
That's right.
as best as you can.
I like that. Okay, so here's a interesting question for you. As from your view as having been a child of adopted siblings, what advice would you offer to adoptive parents or parents who are thinking about adopting? They already have biological children. What advice would you offer them?
Well, I've had the opportunity to speak into the lives of a few good friends that have gone into foster care, and I think the number one thing that I tell them, whether they've got kids already or not, is that it's hard. And you hear that from the classes. I'm sure I've not taken the classes, but you know, you hear that and it means one thing, but then once you're in it, it's something completely different. And so I try to give them a sense of reality, because while it should be all of our mission to look after the kids in the foster care system, there has to be some level of like full understanding before you get into it, because it can lead to a lot of like real hardship and real pain if not. And then the other thing, when they do have kids especially, I tell them you have to make sure that you guys are a team, because I mean that's one of the biggest things that I appreciate about how our parents did that, is they, you know, Emily and I were a part of every decision process. We were even like on the inside scoop when it came to finances and just all of the normal everyday stuff. We were a part of like that battle team, if you will. And I think that really made all the difference, for sure.
Yeah, I think I would echo what Eric has said. Like, you know, it is hard. It is. I've talked to friends who have also been like considering it, and I'm like, it takes a village. It takes having a really good support system, and because I've walked through it, like as from a sibling point of view, like I'm like I would be there for you in a heartbeat if that is what you decided. I think, again, like Eric said, just making sure that you make time for your biological kids if you have them already, and like just give them ways to like still take up that time. Like, I think one of the things Mom did for us when we were little is she gave us each a notebook, and she called it her a pillow.
I forgot about that.
Well, we've been talking about giving it to Jilly, I think, recently. So that's why it's fresh in my brain. But it's a notebook, and she called it like a pillow talk book. And that way, if we had any like concerns or anything, Eric and I also didn't like necessarily want to add to the stuff that Mom and Dad were dealing with. So we learned pretty quickly like how to like deal with things on our own. Be our own solutions, which is okay, and it's not a bad thing. But they did also give us that opportunity that if we did have something that we wanted to talk about, we could write it down in the notebook and put it under Mom's pillow, and then she would read it and respond and put it under our pillow. That way we just...
You have such amazing ideas.
But like that was, like they prioritized us a little bit sometimes. That wasn't like... It wasn't like all the time, but they like there was once a week that somebody would come over and watch the kids so that they could take us out to dinner, and just like just the four of us. Before we adopted Angel and Allie, they took Eric and I to Disney World for a week, just the four of us. So like you like find time to prioritize those kids too, because often your bio kids are not the ones causing the problems.
And they're not demanding.
And they're not demanding the attention because
Right.
they've learned to solve their own problems.
Right.
But they're still kids, and they still need it.
Yeah.
I remember an adoptive mom sharing that with me in kind of a different situation of not forgetting about the kids that are not causing the trouble.
Right.
Because they can feel like they're being forgotten about, even though you love them to pieces, but because you're always having to deal with the child that is requiring the attention.
Yeah. Yeah, and we made sure we did some, like some teenage times.
Yeah, we would have big kid days over the summer where, like, Eric and I could invite however many friends over we wanted, and we just had free reign for the day, and the little kids couldn't, like, had to ask us to be included if they wanted. They couldn't just, like, tag along. So they were days that were just about Eric and I. So
That's good. You did good, Cindy.
Aww.
I mean, we're both here, so.
we both agreed to be here.
And you still have smiles on your faces,
Yeah.
so. So how has adoption shaped you into who you are today?
Yeah, I think for both of us it's shaped our careers a little bit, and I'll let Eric explain.
In different ways.
Let Eric explain his, but I went to school to be an author, a children's author, and the whole time I was at school, I was kind of using Down syndrome as like as a crutch, because for one, I didn't really want to put a ton of effort into writing assignments because I just knew it and I could just kind of knock it out. And my program director, when I was getting ready to do my senior project, my capstone, he was like, I would like to see you do something different and like challenge yourself. I was like, fair. And then we were talking about some of the stories that I had written for class, and I was talking in particular about a children's book that I had written, which was about a brother and sister that with Down syndrome that are superheroes. And I was just writing, and as I was talking about that, I was like, oh, that's just such a needed book. It's that, like, these kiddos don't get to see themselves as a superhero. And as I'm talking, my professor is watching my face just light up, and he's like, I'm going to go back on what I said. And he's like, that's what your career needs to be. It needs to be an advocacy platform. And I was like, yeah, I would love that. And then, so I graduated, and I was looking for a job that was not Target, because I was done with working at Target, and I decided I was going to be a paraprofessional at a local high school, and so I was interviewing, and every question they asked, they're like, so do you have experience with children with disabilities? I was like, yeah, my family. And they're like, do you have experience with children with trauma? I'm like, yeah, my family. And like, just like every question, I was like, yeah, this is how I grew up. I can handle it. And so then I took the para job, and then was a para for 1.5 years, and got to work with some great kiddos. And then last summer, the school that I work for called me, and they asked if I wanted to be a special educator because they needed another special educator. And so they're licensing me as I go, and I get to, the kiddos that I help, that are on my caseload, I get to help, and I have the tools that I need to help them because of my family and because of the way that I grew up. And so I get to understand what they're thinking and kind of how their brain works. Like, one of my kiddos has reactive attachment disorder, just like Angel. And so I've gotten to be kind of help explain how his brain works to some of the other staff on our team. And just because I have experience with that, and they know it from a textbook and don't know it in practice. And I'm like, this is so I get to be an advocate for those kiddos. And so yeah, it's definitely has molded me as an adult, because it's like just the way it's all God, just his how he's lined it up. So
yeah, and I think Emily would agree in saying that like that stuff is just second nature.
It doesn't feel like I'm doing work at most of the time.
Working in and around and with the special needs community and the trauma community, that all just is, it's, you just have an understanding of how they function. I also did a year as a special ed para before Emily did, so she just copied me. I got to it first. But it just seemed like the most natural thing in the world, and I was doing things that other paras and even the special educators had never thought of, and it was making great progress with the kids. And then I was called to work in another area, and so then I've gone to work with teens in the juvenile justice system, helping them deal with their trauma in more of an advocate way, and then now I'm working, trying to get adults in the justice system connected with different social and substance use services, so that we can bring all the recidivism rates down and all of that stuff. I think one of the biggest things that growing up and being a part of a home that included kids with trauma and kids with special needs, like one of the biggest ways that affected my adulthood was it was my identity, right? My family was my identity. And coming into being an adult, everyone asks you, oh, well, what is your favorite this or your favorite that, or who are you as a person? And it took me a little while to figure that out, because I couldn't just say, oh yeah, well, my family, and go and talk for 20 minutes, because I was 23, 24 years old, and I didn't have an answer to a ton of those questions. And so it took a little bit of an adjustment for me to become an individual and to function in that way. But yeah, that upbringing prepared me to deal with so many life situations that apparently just stump everyone else. And it's always like, it feels almost like a cop-out, but it's always just, we'll wait and see, or it'll work out, just like we were talking about before, like it's going to be what it is. And I don't have to worry about it, because God's not surprised by anything that's happening. I don't have to be happy about it, and I very rarely am when difficult things are going on. Yeah. But I get to have that peace from my experience growing up.
Yeah.
As you're talking, it just reminds me of Jeremiah 29:11, and what you guys have shared is just a beautiful picture of how God, his plans for us work. And as we're growing and we're little, and you think about your adopted siblings and the start that they've had in life, and yet it's going to be beautiful to watch what their plans are as well, that God has for them. And you guys are adults now, so you get to see what, his hand in everything. Yeah. And it's a beautiful picture. So what are the verses in your life that God has put in your life that have spoken to you?
Yeah. So my verse kind of the moment right now is Ephesians 2:10, which is, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." And this is kind of like twofold. One, because like Eric said, I am also going through that process of figuring out who I am as an adult. So, sorry.
It's okay, I cry all the time.
I never cry. Oh, man.
And so, like, I've been really working hard the last few years. And, like, I did have to move to Vermont, I think, in order to do that. Like, I had to have 2,000 miles of separation.
Our family bond is so strong.
Otherwise, she never would have changed.
Because I would have been constantly in the middle of all of the family drama and needing to fix it. And I still am. But now I'm 2,000 miles away, so I can't.
So it kind of like puts that distance
Yeah.
between you and your emotions, even though you care about what's happening in your home and can maybe offer support.
Yeah.
You don't have to be so involved.
Yeah,
with
and
Solution.
there have been times when I have had to tell Mom, like, if I want updates on this particular kid, I will ask. Other than that, I don't want to hear it.
Yes.
And
you know, that's really important for the parents out there, is that you need to allow your children to have their lives. And
Right.
with the type of family we had, it's, you know, I think the reason why we all bonded is, you know, especially the four of us, that was our identity, is because that was our mutual experience there. And
We trauma bonded.
we
Yeah.
did.
We did. I mean, we're laughing about it,
Yeah.
but that's
It
realistically,
is what it is.
you know, the definition of trauma is some extenuating circumstance that you don't know when it's going to end, and you don't have a full solution for it, and that's life in our family, and it was for a really long time. And so when a team of people, anybody, not just families, goes through something like that, it's that connection is there forever, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a unique situation because two of the people in that group now have to figure out how to individuate and separate from that in some way, you know, not entirely, obviously.
So I think that's why, like, just remembering that my identity first is I am God's creation.
Right.
And, like, that is something that's so important for me right now. And then, like, the second half of that verse is just what we've been talking about, you know. I've been created to do these good works that God prepared in advance for me to do. Like, he knew when he was putting these kids into my family and he was putting these kids into my life, he knew that one day he would ask me to step up and be a special educator. And I wouldn't be the special educator that I am now if I didn't have those kiddos. I probably would have never even considered it. And actually, if you had asked me, like, a couple of years ago if I would be a teacher, I would have said, absolutely not. I will not. And I did say that. But God was preparing me to do that. And so I think that's, like, those are the two things that I'm really focusing on right now. Is one, God made me, and God's creation is good and perfect. And so I'm fine just as I am. And two, that I have good things to do that he's preparing me to do. So that's what's important. That's what God is working on me with. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's always good verses. Every time I read the Bible, I'm like, oh, that's my favorite. And then I forget. But the one that's kind of stuck with me for years is from Ecclesiastes, which is funny because it's a stereotypically very negative book. Lots of just like doom and gloom in there. But Ecclesiastes 11:5 just says, "As you do not know the way the spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything." And as somebody who just really likes to know stuff
all his life,
and likes to control what's going on around me, this verse is a great challenge and encouragement just to say, well, you don't get to know everything, and you're not going to. And that's okay, because, just like with a pregnancy, it works out when God works it out. And we have very little control over that.
That's right.
It's funny just listening to them, and excuse me again if I get emotional, but it is just listening to them in this interview. Eric was always a need to know kind of kid. He had to know everything. And Emily, would sink back and
I'm a little
hide
too
herself,
lackadaisical.
and just
too trusting to go with
just
the flow.
hearing their voices and where God has them right now. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think without the family that we've had that they would be able to embrace this as well.
Right.
I don't know if that's...
Yeah, I don't think that I would be... Well, I think that God probably would have still brought us into similar spaces, but I don't think we would have been as well equipped.
Because his plans are perfect.
They are. They are.
So those moms who are feeling guilty, you don't have to feel guilty because God's plans are perfect.
Right. Totally.
Yeah, and God is allowing those kids into your kids' lives as well. It's not just like He's not just bringing them into your life. He's allowing them into your kids' lives as well. And so
which is something we've talked about before, with Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you. We think about that verse in relation to ourselves, but we don't always think about it in relation to our kids. And in relation to our biological kids and our adopted kids and even the foster kids that come through homes, God's plan is perfect for them. And the experiences that they experience while they're in your home are perfect.
Yeah.
They may not seem perfect at the time,
Right.
but it's all leading to where he wants them to be and how he wants them to grow.
Totally. You're exactly right.
Do you have anything to add, Cindy?
I don't. I am just so stinking proud right now. I am in love with my family. I would have never expected.
Now, I had you pretty well convinced that you were not going to have any other kids.
Eric did prepare me. And if you met Eric now, you would never know.
He was an absolute terrorist.
Yeah, he did prepare me for the family I would have. And I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment because we kept going after Eric.
Yeah, well, then Emily tricked you.
Yeah, I know.
We've had things were going to be easy.
We've had kids' church ministers that we've run into years after we graduated from kids' church.
Yeah, they still know her.
They know who I am. They're like, oh my gosh, Emily! And then they look at him and like, who are you? And like, we're only a year and a half apart, but they had blocked him from their memory.
Yep.
But now he's okay. We like him.
Yeah. He's a good guy. I'll keep him.
All right, let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this time with Eric and Emily. Thank you for how you bring families together and the plans that you have for the kids that need special care and that need to be in our families. Thank you for the biological kids that are in our families and the impact and the important role that they play in helping us to minister to the adopted children in our families. And I pray that you will be with Eric and Emily and bless them in their future plans and in the coming year with all that you have for them and all that you have to help them grow and to just bless them in the days of their lives. And I thank you for Cindy and the impact that she's had in her family, and for Kevin and all of everything that's going on that Cindy always thinks is chaos, and yet you have in all of that chaos your perfect plan. Thank you for the moms that are listening, and I pray that you will help them in their day to day as they go about what they're doing to remember that you are with them in every difficult situation and in every blessing that flows through their homes. In your name I pray. Amen.
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 And as always, you can find me at jodyrandolph.com, supporting adoptive moms, and Cindy at
nevereasyalwaysgood.com. We talk about real life and real faith.
And the links to this podcast will be in the show notes. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.